Good morning, everyone. Please take your seats. Good morning and welcome to today's town hall with President Hiram Chodosh. There are lots of seats all over the tent. With our view screens, you should be able to watch from any vantage point. Welcome, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed Professor Ron Libeskin-Hadassah's talk this morning. We certainly learned a lot about what's going on here at CMC and where our future integrated sciences program is going, which we're all very excited about. It's my pleasure now to welcome the president of the Parent Network Board and parent to senior Sydney, Nicole Heath. Nicole.
Hi, and welcome, and how wonderful to see everybody in person. This is, right. So what many of you may not know is that we are the only one of the 5 Cs who's having an in-person family weekend. Yes. Pomona had one in the fall, but Scripps, Pitzer, and Mudd are all doing this through Zoom. So I want you all to join me in a gigantic thank you to the CMC administration. And especially to Jeannie Scalmanini, who is the director of Alumni and Parent Relations, who had to reinvent this entire idea of family weekend. But thank you for doing it. I have one quick advertisement before I get on to the 2 most important things, the Jill Stark Award and introducing our president. We decided to do a fun intramural demonstration of inner tube water polo, which if you've never seen, you won't believe, in the pool outside next to Roberts. It's at 8:30 tonight. And it is, as the name implies, water polo in inner tubes. And they're only missing a referee. So if there is a parent or a sibling who plays water polo, we just go on over at 8:20. And one of the rules of the road with this game is that if a referee doesn't see it, it's not cheating. So you can imagine how much they need a ref. So please come. So before let me just, the right sheet out here. Before I introduce President Chodosh, it's my pleasure to announce the parent volunteer who has won this year's Jill Stark Award. This is the 7th year we have awarded this honor to a parent who best exemplifies the characteristics of Jill Stark, the former First Lady of CMC. But before I say who the winner is, I'd like to just briefly tell you about the marvelous Jill for whom the award is named. And Jill, will you please just stand up briefly and wave so everyone knows who we're talking about? Jill is a 1958 graduate of Scripps, First Lady of CMC, while her husband Jack, who is sitting next to her, was college president from 1970 until 1999, and the guiding light behind the Athenaeum, where she served as the founding director. A committed CMC booster and honorary grandparent to countless CMC students, including our daughter Sydney, and the actual grandparent of a class of 2011 graduate. The award honors a parent who over the year has contributed time and talent that goes above and beyond, directly benefiting students, who has, by her or his actions, inspired other parents to become more involved with the college. This year's winner is Sherry Bernardez, mother of Jenny from the class of 2022. Sherry and her husband Tim live on Mercer Island outside Seattle, and it was our good luck that she gave up a career with Arthur Andersen and Oracle to be a full-time volunteer, so she had time to be the co-chair of our Admission Ambassador Committee and serve on the Parent Network Board for 4 years. Under her leadership, the Admission Ambassador team has grown to be the largest committee, and her members successfully reached out to welcome countless ED1 and ED2 parents, as well as the parents of regular admission students. She's offered training to her fellow parents on how to confidently contact new parents, congratulate them, and share the numerous resources available to answer all those questions new parents inevitably have. Vice President of Admissions Jennifer Sandoval-Dance said of Sherry, "Sherry's positivity is palpable. Her warmth, sincerity, and constant smile led the way to transcend the challenges we faced these last few years. Under her leadership, the Parent at Mission Ambassador Program has flourished. Her leadership and engagement are a trademark of CMC and emulate what makes this community so distinctive. So Sherry, congratulations, and why don't you and Jill come up to accept your award? And I know Jill wants to just say a couple of things.
Sherry, what I think is the most amazing part of this award is that you're being awarded to do something that you love to do. And very few people get awards for that. And I loved my time at CMC. This is just an amazing institution, and you will have, just as was mentioned, hundreds of children now that will remember you, and this will be a lasting lifetime award just for doing exactly what you want and having a lot of fun at it. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
So you can give this to her.
I will. Oh my goodness. And in your honor, you have a beautiful, beautiful clock.
These are for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
I'm now happy to introduce the president of CMC, Hiram Chodosh. President Chodash's CV is lengthy, so I will just share an edited version. Before coming to CMC in 2013, he was widely recognized for innovations in higher education and scholarship in comparative law. His work in international justice reform has globally impacted Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. He received a Gandhi Peace Award and was a senior Fulbright scholar. He was recognized as one of the 25 most influential legal educators in the country, all of that before he came to CMC. Since becoming president, he's raised over $200 million for financial aid and has already exceeded initial goals for the Campaign for CMC Responsible Leadership, the most ambitious liberal arts campaign in history, and is nearing a completion of the most significant investment in the college's future around integrated sciences. Under his leadership, he has also directly impacted the lives of our students by opening 4 new centers: the Saul Center for Student Opportunity, which is career services on steroids; Roberts Pavilion, which puts many D1 athletic and recreation centers to shame; the Care Center, which trains students to transcend social differences; and the Murty Sunak Quantitative and Computing Lab, the hub for integrating data and computer science into all fields of study. The list goes on, but what matters most to my husband and me as parents is that he cares deeply about the education and well-being of our children. CMC's mission is to develop well-educated, ethical, and responsible leaders. President Chodosh wants them also to be healthy and happy. I give you the leader of the CMC community, President Hiram Chodosh.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you, Jill, and congratulations, Sherry. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you. Wow. I can't even absorb the moment. I really can't. It's been 2 years since we, as a family, have been together in person here in Claremont. And Nicole's very generous introduction was bringing me back to the first moment when I arrived on this campus. I think many of you were here in the fall, but we haven't had the time really to be as present in person together with the social medium of our intense exchange that is the medium for our growth and success in the world. I have really 3 goals today. One is to create a shared learning experience for all of us. And I mean shared. This isn't just about what I have to say. Imagine each of you is the president. Imagine we're all students and teachers today. And we need to collect that wisdom, that experience, those perspectives, those ideas, those expectations, of the entire community. One of the things that I've learned from Jill over the years and Jack is that when they led this college, they created a family ethos. A family ethos that we had shared objectives, shared commitments in the world to take care of one another, but to always look at the grand challenges and to walk or climb or run up those hills together arm in arm. My second objective is actually to test ourselves against our own expectations. I don't come with prepared remarks today. I'm hoping that your questions, your comments, your ideas can challenge our expectations. Every day when we wake up here, we ask ourselves, why are we here? What can we do better? How can we grow this next outstanding generation of responsible leaders to take on the grand challenges? And third, I want to give you just a glimpse into the future. Remember the future. A great Polish historian once said, we imagine the past, especially in our 75th year, with our archives and all of the wonderful talks about the way the college used to be, but let's remember the future. You heard Ron's amazing presentation this morning with his vision for integrated sciences. It's not the only thing we're doing, but it is right now the biggest thing we're doing. And I want to show you just a few images of the future that is imminent for us, for all of us. Now, to get us off in the right direction, on a personal level, again, going back to my first time on the campus, closed presidential search, don't know anyone. Actually, Priya and I had this funny experience because I said, how can I interview for a college without actually going on a tour? Well, I couldn't present myself as a candidate for the job, so Priya and I show up at the admissions office with no young man or young woman to show around the campus, right? And the pretense was, well, we're just in the area. We have a 16-year-old at home who's interested but couldn't make it. And could you give us a tour? Well, we show up. We thought we would be like in the back with about 30 other people. No one would notice us. But it was around Thanksgiving and there was no one here. So it was Priya and me and the admissions officer. And then it was Priya and me and the student tour guide. I don't know how we really got through that without anyone noticing, but we didn't know the place. So when I was announced, it was early December on a Thursday night, it's sort of like being the stepdad of an intense extended family being flown in and parachuting down. No one knew me from Adam. So, I have this little black book that I carry around with my notes, and earlier that week I was getting prepared for this big moment, and I had it by my bedside and woke up in the middle of the night. Say, I got this idea, and I wrote it down and went back to sleep. And I got up the next morning, and I looked at what I had written down and said, write this down. Well, that was no good. And then I had written down some notes, but that evening I left my black book in my briefcase, in the car, in the trunk of the chair of the Board of Trustees. So I had nothing. I'm like you today. I'm with you today. I got nothing. And so all I could do is tell a story. As Joan Gideon once said, we are the stories we tell. And the story is a very personal one for me. It was a story told on the eve of our wedding. Priya and I got married. We had what I call a Hindu ceremony. We had a Hindu ceremony followed by a Jewish ceremony. And the rabbi in the Jewish ceremony told this story. There's an old, poor man in southern Poland who has a dream one night of traveling to a distant place somewhere in Austria to a bridge guarded by a soldier. And under this bridge, he finds a pot of gold. He wakes up. He tells his wife of this dream. He gathers all of his belongings against her better judgment. He takes off for this faraway city. Several days pass. He's hungry. He's tired. He can barely see. He's confused. And all of a sudden, he comes upon the bridge. And as he approaches the bridge, yes, it's guarded by a soldier. And yes, it's the soldier from his very dream. But something happens. The soldier looks at this sleepy, old, impoverished man and says, "Sir, I saw you in my dream the other night. And beneath your little wood-burning stove, there was a pot of gold." Now, the story really has two lessons for me. One, of course, is we need not look beyond the parameters of our own life to find the treasures within. That's the one I want to stick with today. But I'll mention a second. Had he never taken the risk to make the journey, he would never have discovered the treasure within. The whole lesson would have been lost. So each of you today, have come, sometimes we've got some folks who've come a couple blocks, but some of you have come a long way to be here. So here's a test, okay? I want you to shout out. Those of you who think in miles, the furthest you come to be here, like who's come a long way? Okay, shout out, how many miles have you come? Come on, I'm sure you're tracking your flight miles, right? 12,000. Anyone beat 12,000? All right, 25. 12,000. 45,000? Wow, we've got someone from the space station. It's amazing. All right. And we have some parents who I know just come from a couple blocks. So you've all come out of commitment to your outstanding, amazing sons and daughters. You've all come, for me, as an expression of commitment to us as a community. But I also want to say, I hope you've all come to enhance your own ability to learn. I think you got into this a little bit, Ron, when you're talking about, at the end, this notion of a college for alumni and parents, right? I want you to, let's make this our college today, and let's all commit ourselves to self-learning, the learning that we must do every single morning of every single day. We have a theme at work at CMC called self-authorship. The idea of self-authorship is that we want to take our students through a process where when they wake up in the morning, what they do in study, in work, in life, in friendship, is more directed by their interior motivations than by external demands or incentives. So when I wake up every day, do I care, what do my friends think of me, or what friends do I want to make? Do I think, what employer will hire me, or do I think, what job do I want to do? You get the idea. Okay, so we're all in this together, right, today. So what I want you to do is I'm going to pose a number of questions for a while. We'll get back to some Q&A, and I'll show you the future. This is what's going to test our expectations, but I want to start small. I want you to stand up. I want you to, you can fist pump if you want. I don't care. Handshakes are all right. And I want you to exchange some conversation, and then we're going to bring that conversation back to the whole community, okay? So let's start with a great question. As parents, what's one critical lesson we've learned as parents? Okay? All right, up. I'm going to give you a minute. It's like kind of a pop quiz. Introduce yourselves. Share back and forth. folks. Okay, folks. All right. Okay. All right, folks. All right, we have to. This is these are like pop quizzes, folks. Okay. See, you're taking it even further than I thought. This explains why we have such a quiet, withdrawn student body. So shy, never have anything to say, no ideas, inarticulate. Okay, folks, all right, let's go. Okay, what do we got? Anyone want to volunteer we'll take maybe 2 or 3 of these, but continue the conversations. What's something someone has learned as a parent, a really important lesson? How would you express it? Yes?
Listen to your children.
To listen.
There you go.
Okay, well, hold on to listening because, listening, I think, is one of our most important learning objectives in our society right now, right? I mean, yes, with your children listening, but also listening to one another. I would add listening to those with whom you disagree probably the most. This is a big challenge for us. We'll come back to that in a moment, but that's a great one. What else? Yes?
Let them fail and on their own, and encourage them to do things that are maybe scary to them or you, like go on a flight by themselves or even order food on their own from a very young age.
Yeah, I think that I speak as a parent here, okay? Pri and I, our kids are 29, 26, so they're a little bit ahead, but we've been through the same generational pressures. We all feel this immense insecurity about our kids' future and a responsibility to them as if there's a train leaving the station and we better make sure they get on that train or else they're going to be left behind. We all feel it, right? We didn't all go about to intend to be helicopters and snowplows, right? That was like, we didn't say, gosh, our childhoods were so free and, no one really cared when we were biking around town and as long as we got home by dark. We didn't go out of our way to destroy that, right? Like, how can we mess up community for our kids? How can we undermine play and fun? How can we take away the kind of responsibilities that come from being out on your own? None of us intended that, right? But we're all part of this cultural set of forces. And our courage to fight against them, to allow our kids to fail, make mistakes, try new things, do things that we wouldn't do. And I can relate to this because I think one thing I've learned, and I certainly learned a lot about how to be a better parent from our students here, is trust. Trust. And I think my worst moments as a parent was when I didn't have trust, and my best moments as a parent were when I had trust. And that's something that we all have to work with together on, right? Is to trust and not to be so obsessed with the result, because the results will be good. I can show you the data. The results are outstanding, folks. We have one of the most successful postgraduate outcomes in the world of any institution. So you guys, no fear. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be involved in a Socratic way in helping our outstanding young women think about this. But let's relax some of the focus on the instrumentalism toward an end. And let's make sure that they make use of every single moment here to look laterally, to ask questions, to have doubts, to be vulnerable. Okay, what else? What else we got? Yes?
You don't have positive influence or impact through forcefulness.
Okay, so how would you describe the alternative to that? So you're talking about coercion, right? versus what?
versus conversation
Yeah.
and involvement and questioning.
Yeah, and to some extent, I think about this a lot. It's our own vulnerabilities, and being open about what we're confused about. I mean, I know a lot of our students, they look at us, the faculty or us in the leadership team, and they think we have all figured out. We don't. We're trying to figure new things out every day. That's why we're gathered here today. I want you to help me figure things out today. Okay. All right, second question. And this is more now, we're going to think a little bit more globally, nationally. What are the biggest challenges or opportunities that come into your mind? Like whether from the paper or your own reading or your own conversations, like what are Ron laid out some grand socioscientific challenges earlier today, but what's on your mind? What are you concerned about? What are you excited about? Okay, another pop quiz, all right? But this one you guys have to listen for the clap and get back because we got to get going here, okay? All right. Again, you can talk it up, maybe introduce yourselves to some new folks now, someone you didn't talk to before, and share a challenge or an opportunity, something big on the horizon that you're excited about or really concerned about. Okay? Let's go. All right. Okay. All right. I know I'm a very unfair professor today. I've given you 2 minutes to think about the world's greatest challenges and opportunities. Yeah, my students used to complain about this all the time, right? Okay, what do we got, folks? What's on our top list collectively? Yes.
The divisiveness of the country and the world where issues cannot be discussed or
Excellent. Hold on to that divisiveness. I want just to prefigure the very next question, okay, while you're thinking about the problems. What do we need to learn to solve that problem? Okay? So hold on to that. That's absolutely essential. What else we got? Yes.
Just the existential threat or concerns around artificial intelligence.
Okay, so Ron talked about this earlier. Every technology can be for good or bad, right? In my family, we have these big arguments about technology. I say, how do you feel about fire? You get the point, right? And so we have to maximize the good and mitigate the risk. That's what this whole program is about. So again, hold on to that. What else, folks?
Weak opinions, strongly held, people falling into opinion camps.
Yeah, this is related to this question about divisiveness, conclusions in search of evidence, the emphasis on the signal over the substance. I would even say the absence of questions. Questions, good questions, as a fundamental expression of our curiosity and open inquiry in the world. Without that, we're closed off to what's around us. And if we walk around the world just thinking that we know things, we're likely to make big, big errors because we know that what we know today is unlikely to sustain itself tomorrow. What else we got?
We talking to some students this morning, and this may be more local, but I think it's appropriate global, is how do we rebuild our culture post-COVID? Everything has changed, and there's some people that are saying that CMC has changed because who were we before?
Yeah.
What pieces do we want to hold dear and keep, and what pieces maybe we want to let go, and what do we look like in the community?
This is a great one, and one that's really been pressing on me. I'm sure on all of you. I started to get a little frustrated a year or so ago when people were saying, what will the future be? I was like, no, that's not the right question. What future are we going to create? Now, one thing I do want to reflect on here is that I think there's been a complete lack of attention to the overarching, underwriting psychological impact. And, we know a little bit about psychological challenges. A lot of them, they're not wholly explained, but a lot of them are explained by feelings of isolation and dislocation. Well, what did COVID and the public restrictions to deal with it do to all of us? We all feel it. A lack of emotional reserves, anxiety, just overarching concern. How do we rebuild that culture, and how do we reshape the lives that we have? What's the future of the office? What's the future of a campus? What's the future of a classroom? These are big questions that are sitting right before us. But let's not lose sight of the underlying psychological well-being for all of us, and our connection to one another, and our sense of shared purpose. That's a wonderful one. What else? Anyone concerned about the climate or criminal justice or, yeah, okay. I know all those concerns are out there. Yes.
We had a conversation about making connections, and I think a lot of the other topics that have been brought out through the questions are really relevant, like how do we connect in a post-COVID world where we don't want to be too close, or we have to do it virtually,
right,
or other cultures and our differences, or other camps of our opinions and our differences. And connections are super important to who we are as human beings. And how do we reestablish an ability, or our technology in our phones and keeping us in the airports looking around, everyone was really in their own little world.
Yeah, the zombie effect, right?
Yes, and how do we create connections despite all of those various challenges?
Yeah. another great challenge, and one that's reflexively important for us here as a college. Okay. Yes.
We were concerned about the threats of pandemic and the threats of war and how that might affect our children's ability to study abroad.
Yeah, sure. So we have the pandemic, we have a crisis on the Russian-Ukrainian border, well, the Belarusian-Ukrainian border as well. And so there is a lot of anxiety about that. And in terms of study abroad, how do we continue to persist? I met a young woman just yesterday who was abroad last semester when many colleges didn't allow anyone to go abroad. And she was super thankful that she was able to have that experience. Obviously, we're very careful about how we curate those experiences, but that is essential. Once we lose the ability to cross a border, we've lost all the learning that comes from the mastery of another language, the psychological learning that comes from learning a different system, the assumptions that get exploded because things aren't the way that I'm used to their being, and the understanding that comes from reverse projection, looking back on ourselves. So it's essential that through all these challenges, we persist and that we find those strategies that we can use to be able to connect, to do the things, to pursue our learning objectives. Okay. Maybe this is my last question, and then we'll talk about what we're doing here, and I'll show you a glimpse of the future, okay? All right. Obviously, all of the things you've mentioned are in some ways of accentuated importance in education, right? The ability to carry out discussions and to have open inquiry, to ask questions rather than just to launch opinions. The reconnection socially, culturally, the reestablishment of the ethical foundations of community and shared purpose. So when you think broadly about education or higher education, what are the main challenges, structural challenges, that come to mind that you think our country or any society in the world or the world as a whole needs to overcome? Okay, learning challenges in the context of these other structural challenges and opportunities we're talking about, okay? So higher ed challenges. Let's, again, find somebody else, exchange some words. Let's see what you got.
Listen, baby, ain't no mountain high, ain't no valley low, ain't no river wide enough, baby.
If you need me, call me. No matter where you are, no matter how far.
Don't worry, baby.
Just call my name. I'll be there in a hurry. You don't have to worry. 'Cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough. Ain't no valley low enough. Ain't no river wide enough
To keep me from getting to you, baby. Remember the day I set you free. I told you you could always count on me, darling. From that day on, I made a vow. I'll be there when you want me, some way, somehow. Oh, baby, there part of me's like anatomy. You're pulling me. You're pulling me like your gravity. Oh, I'm notorious for
Folks.
thinking you're
Okay, folks. All right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody. What do we got? All right. Yes. What are the challenges? Big challenge.
Higher education needs to figure out how to stay relevant. How to stay relevant, accessible,
Good.
practical.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. We'll come back to those, okay? Excellent. Yes, John.
We discussed higher ed having a reluctance to invite both sides of the discussion to the table, and there's sort of an overwhelmingly one-sided influence among faculty in a lot of higher ed. Maybe not here, but elsewhere.
Good. It's a great challenge. Yes.
I'm going to take credit for this idea, which was not mine, by the way, but it was a great idea, which is how do we, in this world when there's so much information, so much data, much of which we don't know that we can rely on, how does education teach the soft skills to sort through
Right.
and to persuade and influence? How do we learn that in the higher education environment?
Good.
That those soft skills.
Excellent. Okay. What else we got? Some back here, in the back there. Yeah, stand up and yell loud, and I'll repeat it.
Ambiguity and uncertainty.
Wonderful.
So I think the world has changed very dramatically, and one of the things we need to teach ourselves and our children is how to get comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty, which is something that we all grapple with.
Yeah, I love this point. Okay, well, we're going to come back to this in a moment. What else we got? Yes, please.
How can higher education reach outside its four walls on a campus?
Good. To be more externally focused, relevant, if you will, right? Yes.
How does higher education solve for what is economic so that individuals without privilege have access, not just access economically, but access even to understand how to access the education.
Right.
And individuals in the middle having access to the education when they might not be able to afford it, but schools think they can. The other issue that I see is that what is the purpose of higher education these days? Is it to create individuals who think, or is it a training ground for a career? And if it's a training ground for a career, how do we expect a 17-year-old to know what they want to be when they grow up?
Excellent. Okay. I want you to hold on to these questions, because in a moment, I want you to repose them to me at CMC. What are we doing about? Okay, so I get ready, because I'm going to come back to you. Yes.
I think the role of education itself is being redefined probably, because the way we understood it in the past is to download information about
Good.
whereas information and knowledge itself is becoming more and more increasingly redundant. And what we need to probably acquire are continuous learning skills to be learning machines. Did we learn computers 20 years ago? Do we use them today? And the answer is absolutely yes. What are we going to be doing 5 years from now, which is going to be dramatically different?
Excellent. So,
all of those
right.
theories are being redefined, re-evolved, and reimagined.
This notion that the older generation passes on knowledge and understanding to the younger generation is challenged by the fact that our understanding is happening or changing so quickly. And so there's a kind of, think about the architecture of a classroom. I'm in the front, the students are there, I'm conveying to the students, I give them an exam, I test them on the exam, their mastery of what I know. I'm not so sure. Like, that's important, but also our students have understanding that is ahead of ours. I mean, after, again, referencing Ron's presentation, it's often the case that our students are already there. They're already doing the things that we're trying to prepare the students to do. And so that's a really important point, is not to think so top down about conveyance, but to create and facilitate the grounds for, what did I say, self-learning, self-authorship, to use the tools that we can convey, but to create new frameworks that compete with the world's frameworks. Yes?
Also on how to expand students' awareness of a world which is very diverse, which doesn't, the vast majority of which does not look like Claremont, which suffers from
Right.
discrimination, from exclusion, from prejudice, because I think that gathering that understanding of the bigger world will help all Claremont
Good.
students to really succeed.
Excellent. Okay, so these are all great, and there are many more. And the reason I want you to pose these hard, sharply to me is because I want to make sure, this is the second part of this, that we have the highest set of expectations to begin with, and that we strive to meet those expectations every day. Let me just tell you a quick story about this that struck me recently. I was at a conference giving a talk actually about self-learning. There was a keynote speaker by the name of Wes Moore. Wes Moore was a graduation commencement speaker here a few years ago. He wrote a famous book called The Other Wes Moore. It's the story of his journey from poor kid, lost his father at 8, single mother, 2 siblings, who was really a troubled kid at 13. His mother forced him into military school, and he launched Rhodes Scholar, veteran, award-winning New York Times best-selling author. And at the time his Rhodes Scholar was announced, there was an article in the Baltimore papers, presenting his profile, but there was a second article somewhere in the back pages about a jewelry robbery gone wrong, where the security guard had been killed by the robbers. The security guard was a police officer who was moonlighting at the jewelry store because he just had triplets and needed to raise money for his family. One of the 4 men in that crime was named Wes Moore. That's the other Wes Moore in the book. The Wes Moore who was here as commencement speaker became good friends with the Wes Moore who's serving a life term. They had a conversation. Wes Moore, the commencement speaker, asked the other Wes Moore, "Do you think we're the product of our environment?" That's a common phrase, we're all the product of our environment. The Wes Moore who's serving a life term said, "No, we're the product of our expectations. We're the product of our expectations." And so when we set our expectations, we better be pretty thoughtful about the product we're trying to produce. That goes to purpose of higher ed. That goes to meeting all of these challenges. So I'm going to turn it back to you now. I want you to ask me the hardest question you can related to this about CMC and what we're doing. Okay, let's go back around a little bit. Let's capture some of these things.
Teaching a sense of compassion and empathy among the students, especially during our time where there's so much polarized opinions and not knowing each other's deeper stories as human beings.
Yeah. There are formal ways to do this and informal ways to do this. The formal ways we do this and try to do it is through a little bit of training, dialogue training, use of the care center, orientation, working with our athletics teams on teamwork, working with our student leaders on the soft skills of being able to have a controversial conversation, getting to know someone at the inflection point of their personal life motivations and what they're trying to do more professionally or academically. And then there are lots of informal ways that this gets reproduced. In some ways, folks, if you step back, the experiment we have going on here and other places is really quite extraordinary. Like, where in the world today is there such a rich amalgam of students coming from different backgrounds, different countries, different places in the country, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different experiences against a lot of inequities in our society, all in one intensely social space with the sense of community and shared purpose that we have. It's kind of unheard of in our environment. That creates both a challenge and an opportunity for us to be able to counter these centrifugal effects with the centripetal forces of dialogue and teamwork and mutual care. And it's never perfect, but we strive to make sure that our students are equipped with those social and intellectual skills and capabilities to be able to get outside of a bubble, to get out beyond a barrier, and to be able to converse and relate and understand. In other words, it's a school about leadership, but you can't lead what you don't understand. And that experience here and externally is essential to that learning and growth. In some ways, folks, there are really maybe I'll sort of focus on three broad themes that we've been working on the last few years. It's articulated in what we call the CMC strategy. And I'm going to articulate this in a somewhat reductive way because of lack of time, but I want you to understand where we've put our energies. We mentioned access. Access to access. That was an excellent comment. Because we know from prenatal to pre-K, even if we had universal pre-K, there's a lot of inequity that gets baked into learning. Those are some of the most important years and months and weeks and days and moments in a child's development. And that school often can just do so much to counteract that. We know that when we receive applicants at 17, a lot has occurred before those applications. And so our great commitment has been to try to do what we can from here, wherever we sit on that stream, to break down each and every barrier to the full self-realization of that person and to allow them to gather the tools they need to not only survive, but to thrive. What has that looked like for us? Nicole mentioned first, resources. We needed to increase the resources for the cost of attendance. Over the last 6 years, we've doubled our Pell eligible students coming into Claremont McKenna College. We're now at over 20%. We've tripled, on average, the last 3 years, our students coming to Claremont McKenna College who are first in their families to go to college. But the cost of attendance is only one financial barrier. There's also financial barriers beyond the cost of attendance. All the things that many of us take for granted. The orientation at Bed Bath & Beyond or Target and the runs back and forth and setting up the room and the laptop and the clothes for interviews. Years ago, we created something called the Kravis Opportunity Fund to remove home equity from the financial aid calculation, to have kickoff funding, to have guaranteed summer savings support for any student arriving at CMC who's on financial aid. So lots of, just yesterday, I met a couple students who are studying for, respectively, the LSAT and the MCAT. Well, a few years ago, I used to get calls from students saying, President Chodosh, could you help me because I need to study for graduate school and the test preparation courses are costing $3,000. I was like, that's ridiculous. Here's a stipend for it. Then I thought, we can't just do this on one-off. I can't rely on whether the student has the courage to reach out to me. We established a little line item in Kravis Opportunity Fund. We went out, raised the money, and the two students I talked to yesterday, one LSAT, one MCAT, they got support from the school to get that course done so that they had support to prepare for that exam. So we're constantly trying to knock off those additional financial barriers. But it's not just financial. It's social. It's, do I feel when I arrive that I have a sense of belonging? Do I suffer from imposter syndrome? Gosh, we all suffer from imposter syndrome. But the world sends signals to some of us that because of who we are and where we're from and how we look, that we should suffer because we don't belong or don't belong. We're trying our very best to give that sense of belonging and that sense of connection And that sense of leadership and contributing to and having an impact on, not just support, but the tools, confidence, and resilience. Stacy Doan, one of our greatest researchers in psychology, is doing a grant-based study on resilience. Not just studying it, but how to increase it. Taking a baseline picture, taking students through a series of exercises, and then measuring their ability for resilience at the end of those interactions. So then, it doesn't stop there, because to be successful, we have to have our eyes on expanded opportunity in the postgraduate years and start to expose our students to the experiences they will have in the postgraduate years while they're at CMC. I just looked at some data yesterday. The numbers of work experiences we have on the campus right now, guess what the number is? We have 1,400 students. It's 2,060. Institutes, labs, centers, the Athenaeum, students are working here. And they're doing significant research with faculty. 4 out of 5, by the time they graduate, do advanced research with a faculty member, not including their thesis. That work experience is vital. There's a lot of learning that goes on from that. But also internships. We've been having over half of our returning students coming back from a sponsored internship. The Saul Center now meets with every freshman, not to put pressure on the career decision, not to send students off in a linear path, but to make sure that they are aware of their interests and how they can translate. So that's our opportunity strategy. Second has been really focusing on our responsible leadership mission. And I'll just say a word about this because it's so central to many of the comments you made about the problems of polarization in our country, which are driven by social, cultural, economic forces, not just by our politicians, folks. In some ways, we get the politicians we deserve. We have to focus on the structural issues in our country. And as educators, we have to do what we can against those learning objectives to counteract, transcend, overcome those barriers. If I am stuck in an intellectual bubble, I cannot learn. If I'm stuck in an ideology or against a bunch of assumptions, I cannot progress. Every single field of inquiry, intellectual, technological, policy, law, business, occurs in advances because we question the assumptions that we start with. Sometimes assumptions we hold very dear. Sometimes in a personal way we hold them. And if we can't step back and open up and think structurally about why these disagreements, why these conflicts are occurring, and develop the commitment to listen and overcome and conduct the kinds of conversations and dialogue, we will not have a republic. And so this is one of the great imperatives. We call it Open Academy, a commitment to freedom of expression, the courage to speak, but with respect. Viewpoint diversity, that means active listening, encouraging openness to different viewpoints, and especially the skills of dialogue. Basically, to negotiate, to mediate through very controversial topics. And the college has received a lot of recognition for our freedom of expression commitments, but the only reason we're succeeding there is because of the other commitments, because of the reciprocal commitment to honor what someone else has to say so that they will honor what I have to say. And the last big challenge that I'll talk about now, and I want to show you some images of before we're done, is integrated sciences. And Ron gave a great presentation earlier about this. 3 grand challenges: genomics, what's happening with human health, how do we, again, take advantage of these amazing discoveries, but apply them and follow through with them in ways that meet our larger objectives: brain science, learning science, decision sciences, brain health, and of course the environment, climate, energy, environment, the health of the planet. A huge computational focus, drawing on the power of AI with strong ethical interlays. We have a project called Values Matter, led by one of our great philosophers at the college, looking at the values embedded in science, and of course, with climate. You know, the work of the Roberts Environmental Center, our EnviroLab Asia, our EEP major, and many other programs to advance the inter and multidisciplinary understanding of this great challenge that we face from a business perspective, from a policy perspective, from an ethical perspective. All right, so I want you to continue launching the hard questions back at us, and I want you to test those answers against our greater expectations, because that's why we're all here. I'm not here to do what we did yesterday. I'm not here to just stand on a plateau and celebrate the heights to which we've come. That was before. We take cognizance of that. We learn from that. We learn what we did, we get confidence, we learn where we failed, and we get up and we try again. But it's more to look at what the next summit is. So I want to show you, maybe they could flash, if you guys could flash the slides up and jump ahead to the integrated sciences slides. I want to describe some of the impact on the campus. So I think one of the first questions people have had, and I don't think Ron got into this, just click through this. All right, so this is the architect of the new building. You should look up their work. I mean, this is a world-class architect that we're bringing to Claremont, the Björkes Group. They do some outstanding buildings. We really wanted to have something iconic for our campus. Okay, next slide, please. Where will the center go? Right, where's it gonna go? All right, so we were looking around for sites, and we had this meeting in the Kravis Center, which all of you know because it's where admissions is. And someone said, well, why don't we think about putting it on the baseball field all the way out to the northeast edge of the campus? And I was like, wow, that is brilliant, because we could extend the North Mall all the way from the Kravis Center, to the baseball field. And everyone said, Hiram, it's just so far. You know, it's out there in the barren parking lot. And, you know, it's just not going to work. I said, okay, there were about 17 of us. Let's take a walk. We walked from the Kravis Center, and we walked down the North Mall. And I kept asking people, like, do you need a glass of water? Would you like to sit down? Is it too rough? Have you checked your heart rate? And then we got out to beyond Bauer and then to the baseball field. And they go, Hiram, this is not far. This is not far at all. So we started to really revise our master plan. So this is where the baseball field is now. And we're going to build the Integrated Science Center on that section. And then you see that mall extended from the Kravis Center on the far left. That mall will be extended. Actually, it will blow up or blow through Bauer South, this beautiful, stunning bit of architecture that we have over here, right here to our northeast. And we'll continue on to that corner of campus. And that will be a major polar magnetic force on our campus. Okay, now I want to relate this to something else. There's something else that's happened. So just click up the next slide, and you'll see that the first red block where it says Claremont McKenna College, that is our campus. The other colors are the other campuses. The block that says Claremont McKenna College, that right now is 77 acres. As you guys drive in, did you notice the gravel pit across Claremont Boulevard? Have you ever looked in there? It used to be a little scary. It's not so scary right now because we have acquired, Claremont McKenna College has acquired all of that lot. So as of the fall. Thanks. This was another, big leap forward that we made this past year. That lot, that gravel pit, is 75 acres. By acquiring the entirety of that lot, it doubles the size of our campus. Okay? Now, we have a little bit of a restriction on that land because there's an airport, Cable Airport, just to the northeast. It has an air easement over that land, so we can't build high density use on the whole thing, but we can externalize some of our athletic fields there, and we can build more green space on the campus as a result. So next slide, please. So this is just a kind of a view of the way this will work. So I had you on that extended mall on the top, the North Mall going from Kravis Center all the way to Integrated Sciences. We will then build a diagonal mall that'll go from Roberts Pavilion up to Integrated Sciences and back, and then a southern mall that will go from Roberts Pavilion through the football field with an iconic bridge that goes over to what we're calling for now the Sports Bowl. We're going to make a big announcement on this later this spring. You'll see all the details and the drawings, and actually Big, same architectural firm, has been our master planning architect for this big vision. But this is the future, folks, of CMC. 152 acres, doubles the size of our campus. Long-term, sky's the limit in terms of what we can do out there, okay? Now, back to the building. Next. This is the building, okay? It's a structure of two parallel rectangle structures, stacks, if you will, that then rotate 45 degrees on the second floor and another 45 degrees on the third floor. Next slide, please. We'll just show you some images. This is looking at it from looking east. This is the western entrance. On the ground floor there, at level 1, you see these two large spaces. One of them we're going to call Agora, which is an exchange, a marketplace of ideas. On the left is going to be CMC's version of a makerspace. We're calling the workshop. We're not exactly sure what we're going to pack in there, but it's going to be pretty exciting. You walk into a big atrium. I'll show you some images there. The second floor and the third floors are labs, faculty offices, teaching, research, computation. We have a really wonderful floor plan and design for those right now that Ron and the team have worked on. Here's the atrium. Wonderful amphitheater look, lots of soft seating we're going to put in, lots of power outlets, right? We won't make that mistake. A cafe on the ground floor. We've got some really cool library elements that we're putting into the building, not just books, but interactive learning. The cafe on the ground floor will also spill outside. This is something we call the Quantum Library, but this will be shared work and study space. So think WeWorks without the crazy governance problems. This is the idea of this will be reserved by institutes, centers, and labs for team learning, project-based learning. This is going to be a really special part of the building. This is an image of what the workshop may look like. And what else we got? Here's the Agora. This is a shared training space. Telepresence throughout, so not only to bring great expertise in, but to project our expertise out. So we're going to put a lot of high tech into the building. This is an example of a classroom and the kind of flexibility we can build. I've asked that every chair and every table have wheels so that we can reconfigure those environments however the professor or the students want to refigure them, and also convert classrooms to study spaces at night. This is just some early images of what a teaching lab would be. We're giving some greater definition to this. You can see the wonderful indoor-outdoor look of the building. Some Apple, computational lab features, perhaps. Again, the really dynamic, flexible spaces we want to build here. What else we got? Beautiful terraces, an indoor-outdoor feel. I think we have 8 terraces in the building that we can use really accessibly. All right, that's it. So I wanted you to have a little bit of a shared learning experience. I hope you've met some great people. Please do continue to carry out those conversations, exchange emails, call each other up. Second, please continue to test us. Let's continue to heighten our expectations, and let's go for them. And when we fall short, let's dust ourselves off and go for them again. Because there is no great challenge that you just snap your fingers and supersede. The reason that you undertake the work is to get something meaningful done with the highest ambition and the deepest sense of shared purpose. And finally, remember the future. The future through these outstanding young men and women, what they represent, what they can achieve, what they can contribute, the success and fulfillment that they can have, and the little modest things that we do every day to be a very, very special part of that. And I don't know if Priya's in the back. Theo's here. I wanted you guys all to meet him before we. Where is he? Where'd she go? Yeah. Where is she? Priya, come this way. Come on. Theo's the dog. So I know a lot of you have enjoyed our Athenaeum programming virtually. Priya's the person who makes all that happen. Hey, here. This is Thea. When we were closed, it's hard to even remember us being closed right now, but when we were closed, Priya and I used to walk the campus every night with Theo. And he would go around sniffing every door. He was so upset.
He was.
There's no one happier this weekend than Theo, right? He really, really loves everyone on the campus, and everyone loves him. And I wanted you all to see him.
All your sons and daughters. Like when dorm rooms open, he goes in.
Yeah, he's been in Collins about 4 times this year.
He's not supposed to be.
Yeah. So, anyways,
He does make
folks,
a break for it sometimes.
thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend, and God bless you all.
Music.
Thank you. Thank you, Hiram. Thank you, Priya. So at this point, we have several things you can do. You can, of course, depart campus, go have lunch in the village. We've also brought in food trucks if you'd like to avail yourselves of those. We the Shades and the After Specials, who will be doing a special concert for all of us shortly. Enjoy the rest of the day.